So yes, get your business ready, get the communications ready, get your data room ready, and get out there and let's raise some money. I'm Dr. Becky Sage. Welcome to my brand new series called Sage by Name, where I answer all of your burning business questions. Because I'm here to help real people bring real business ideas to life. No generic advice that just works for robots. I'll be using my 20 plus years of experience working with startup businesses, as well as my own very real, sometimes painful experiences of starting and growing my own businesses. Right now, my day job is working one-to-one or one to a small group of founders in order to help them grow their businesses. So every single day, I'm answering questions, I'm researching, and I'm asking other people in the network how they overcome business challenges. So if you're going through something, I've probably seen it before. So if you have any business questions and you really need to hear some real balanced advice and not just some cookie cutter answers, then drop your question in the comments below, or you can message me with your questions. I'd love to hear from you. So let's get straight in. I collected this first set of questions from my Instagram stories, so thank you for everybody who submitted. And actually, there were a few too many for today, so we will see some of those in the next episodes as well. I will also start to group them together if I get similar questions. And the first one is a big one. Let's have a look. I'm a woman with a tech startup. I've seen the investment stats. Should I even try to raise money from investors in the UK? So let's first address those stats, shall we? Before I get onto the real talk and some of it you may or may not want to hear. There is pretty poor stats for female-only led businesses, as in teams that don't have a mixture of different founders. Only about 2% go to female-only founder teams. And if we put any kind of intersectionality into that, it gets a lot worse as well. So I think it's something like 0.6% of funding goes into Black women-led teams. But the stats aren't quite as they sound. So I thought I'd dig out this recent report from Investing in Women, who have created the Investing in Women Code. And this is a commitment to support the advancement of women entrepreneurs in the UK by improving their access to the tools, resources and finance they need to achieve their goals. So, of course, this is quite UK-centric, and you can probably tell from my voice, I am also in the UK. There are things I'm going to say here that statistically are related more to the UK and some of the schemes involved in the UK, but some of the more general comments I'm going to make are going to be relevant to all female founders out there. So I wanted to share some of the key findings with you. 36% of equity deals go to teams with at least one female founder if the investment committees have 50% or more female members. If the investment committees have less than 50% female members, then 30% of deals go to teams with at least one female founder. So we're not looking great there, but it does start to paint a fuller picture than we saw already. Now, this is really interesting. Female founders accessed more than half of the total investment made by angel groups. So 52% of the total investment made by angel groups went to women. Now, whilst that might sound good, it is good because we all need that early funding from angels to get our tech ideas off the ground. And if you're going for investment with your business, we also have to remember that those angel groups are probably not making such big investments as some of the other investments that are being made. The thing I did read is that there's definitely been an increase in the number of deals, but the actual amount of money going to women-only teams or teams with female founders in them is still much, much lower. Now, the other thing to say is if you're a woman looking for equity and you're feeling like you don't really want to do it, then you are definitely not alone. 34% of female business owners reported being less than happy to use external funding to grow their business. This is compared to 40% of male founders. It's not actually that big a difference. So men are more happy to use external funding than women, but it's not actually a massive difference. So let's move on. Why might you not want to go for funding? At the end of the day, all of us as business owners need to have some kind of objectivity around what we're doing. If you're in a business and you require funding to be able to get to the next stage, why wouldn't you go for funding? That is your job as the person who is running that business, who wants that business to take off. Yes, we have these stats, but we're only going to compound the problem if we sit here and say, oh, well, I'm not very likely to get funding, so I'm not going to go for it anyway. Where's that entrepreneurial drive? Where I personally have also felt that way of like, well, maybe I shouldn't bother trying, is because going for investment can be so draining. It's a lot of energy, and you need that energy to pay off. If you're going to prioritize raising for your business over other things in your business, then you do have to have a certain degree of confidence that you are going to land that funding. If you find yourself in that kind of position, but your business needs that money, I don't see really any reason for you not to be exploring those different parts. It might not be like pitching for equity investment, or it might be pitching for equity investment in different ways and from different people, but why wouldn't you go for it? Let's break down some of the reasons that the stats look like they do. I've already mentioned intersectionality. Systemic issues really play a part here. For a start, not all women are going to struggle to get funding. If you already have networks, if you already check a lot of the boxes, if you've already got your business to the place it needs to be in order to satisfy the needs of the investors, then your equity journey is likely to be a reasonable one. One of the things that does happen a lot is that because so many of the people who are making investment decisions are male, that they don't always understand a female-led business if that business has come from something that is kind of a problem that is unique to women. They often say there isn't a market here, or we don't understand the market, why would people buy this? That's one of the reasons why more equity deals go to women if the investment committees are made up of at least 50% women. Now, the other thing that comes up, this is certainly something that I experienced, is the idea of promotion versus prevention questions. That means that men are more likely to be asked questions that really allow them to paint that vision for the company, get people excited about the company and move them forward. Women are more likely to be asked questions that are about the kind of risks and that are more about the women having to prove that this business is going to work. The reality is this: whether I'm working with men or whether I'm working with women, I still need them to be aware of the risks, and I still need them to be able to articulate their business in a way that is positive without ignoring those challenges that they're going to need to overcome. That's why you're asking for money in the first place. So there's a big piece here around communication and how you communicate your proposition, and how when you get asked those questions, you deal with them and then you look to the future again. The stats also reflect how many women are in the positions to go and pitch for funding or to be in that room in the first place for whatever reason. And that is really the bigger challenge, I think, here, is that there are so many systemic issues that hold women back from even being able to get to that point where they have a business to pitch, or when the business is at that stage that is really ready. So if you already have that, then why wouldn't you be out there pitching for it? So here are some strategies to help, ones that I've actually used. Well, you got to start with the business. Start with doing as much as you can. Keep taking steps forward. Put all your work into getting traction in your business, because this is what investors want, and ultimately, this is what your business needs too. And you might find in the end you don't even need that investment. Secondly, take an older white man with you when you go get investment. I wish I was joking, but this is a very common thing that has been done amongst the female founders that I know who've then effectively got investment. Yes. And that shouldn't just be a random older white man, although it might even work. Yeah, I took the chair of my business with me everywhere I went, and He would do the schmoozing and I would answer the business questions. Warm introductions. Find those people who are already championing your business and get them to make introductions. Incubators and accelerators and other investors can be a really helpful way to do this. And then finally, something that worked for me was I partnered with one of the world's biggest companies. They put my face on a billboard all over London, and suddenly everyone thought I was more credible. Okay, that was a bit of a joke. It wasn't, that did happen, but the thing that you can actually do is do things to raise your profile. So anything you can do around thought leadership or proving out what it is you're doing and the differentiators, the capabilities in your product and the things that go behind your product and how much your customers are loving it. Anything you can do that puts that onto a bigger platform that might help you get it over the line. But ultimately, nothing's going to beat good business, good networks, and good communication skills to pitch all the amazing things you're already doing. So in summary, and specifically to the person who asked this question, you do need to make sure that you have validated the assumptions behind your business, and you do need to be very clear about the traction that you've already got. And you need to work on the communication around how you pitch your business. The other thing I talk a lot about is investor business fit. So really making sure you're understanding what is it that that specific investor wants or needs. Is that the right fit for your business? Are you pitching to the right people, the right types of investors? So yes, get your business ready, get the communications ready, get your data room ready, and get out there and let's raise some money. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I'm a founder experiencing burnout and I live alone. Lately, I'm thinking that this makes it worse. What do you think? Yeah, burnout is something I experienced as a founder. It's something that I've experienced as just in the workplace as well, because I have autism and it was undiagnosed for a really long time and therefore unmanaged. I think that was part of why I was getting into cycles of burnout. I also have a chronic illness, and so I really do have to think about my energy levels, and I've had to figure out how to claw myself out of burnout. Several times. If you're experiencing burnout, I would definitely recommend Dr. Claire Ashley's book. I've spoken about it before on this channel. I've got a couple of videos on how to recognize if you're in burnout and the steps you can take to get out of burnout. In terms of this specific question about living alone, there are a couple of sides to this coin, I think. If you're somebody like me, whose social battery drains pretty easily, and I would describe myself as introverted, as well as having quite a lot of challenges with the social aspects of autism. So I certainly need to recharge. For me, that involves lots and lots of alone time. I love alone time. I can't imagine ever having enough of it, to be honest, even though I value the time I do spend with other people. So I think that in one regard, you really can shut that door, take off the mask, if you and people mask whether you're autistic or neurodivergent or not. The impact is worse, obviously, if you're neurodivergent. So if the person who wrote this is neurodivergent, then I think being able to take off that mask is a really helpful thing to do. Obviously, some people can do that when they are living with other people anyway. I struggle to do that when I'm around other people. Having that space, having that alone time can be really valuable. Where I think it's more difficult is it can make it much harder to snap out of things. So I think we've probably all experienced that thing where we've been around people and just one simple conversation can kind of distract you really from, if you are feeling a particular stress around something, or you've got yourself into certain cycles and things are just getting worse and worse and worse. When you are alone, there's no one else to come along and snap you out of that. So even if it isn't like living with other people or having other people around all the time, I think it is important to put yourself with other people, and maybe people who are going to distract you if it's something particularly stressful within the business that's going on, or maybe it's that you need to talk about the business more. So for me, that's why gymnastics was always incredibly helpful during my first business, because I would work all day and then I would go to gymnastics in the evening, and I would be around friends who had nothing to do with the business world, and I could rant if I wanted to, but equally, if I'm focused on just doing my gymnastics, which not only has those benefits of exercise, it also really, really helped me to switch my brain off and stop thinking about anything that could turn into a rumination if all I was doing was going home straight afterwards. I hope that helped. I think there's other important things to say about burnout, and my examination of it is, of course, we all think it's just completely connected to how much we physically work and how much we physically rest. One thing I've realized, and it's taken me quite a long time to kind of put this into practice, even though I think this is part of my value system, but one thing I've realized is I am not so impacted by overwork. That's not the factor that impacts me the most when it comes to burnout. For me, it's all about values alignment and what I'm actually doing with my time. So, and feeling in control of that. I'm feeling like it's going in the right direction. So, and all of those things are actually my core values, right? To be able to have my own agency and to be able to be working on things where I get to use my voice, where I get to actually use that voice that comes right from the core of me. It's not just like, what do people want me to say? It's like, okay, what's happening in here? And I've recently started therapy, which hasn't always worked for me in the past. And often it doesn't necessarily work for neurodivergent people. So for me, that was one of the signs that was part of that puzzle, that maybe I was autistic. But one of the things that came up in therapy, and she said, well, are you not giving yourself a rest? I was talking about being exhausted all the time. And she said, but do you not feel like you're able to give yourself a rest? And I was like, oh no, I'm like resting all the time. Like physically I'm resting. I'm sleeping at the weekends, and I go to bed really early and everything else. And I said, but the thing that never feels at rest for me, and this was a little while ago, the thing that never feels at rest for me is like that, my soul, the core of me. And by doing work that I enjoy, and by creating and giving myself space to do that, that's when my soul rests. When I have those processes in place, when I'm being disciplined, those are all the things that helps my soul to rest. Of course, we need physical rest too, and mental rest, but it's just really important for me to be in alignment. And I think for a lot of founders, that's also the case. And it's one of the things that means that you can be quite resilient if you're really working on a mission-led business. I'm just realizing that these questions have so many layers to them. Of course they do. And when I'm working one-to-one with people, we kind of really peel back those layers. There's often quite a lot of work to do. Okay, next question. What dictates culture, or what is the foundation of culture? And just before we jump into that question, I just want to say, really happy to take lots of questions on leadership, culture, building your team, really working with your teams effectively, that type of thing, because this is a big area of expertise. I lecture on this topic, and I think the person who submitted this question knows that I really get excited when talking about building good cultures where people can thrive. And that's one of the things I love about being in startups, because when you're building your own startup, you do get to set the tone of the culture. So that's the start of the answer to this question. Let's start then with those foundations of culture, and think it helps to define what culture is. That gives us some of the clues as to how we create a good foundation of culture. So the definition of culture is the shared ideas in a team, the behavioral norms and customs. So what is it shared amongst you? What are the norms? What are the customs? And what's interesting about that is this starts at many different layers. So if you're in a startup team, often the mission of the business is going to say something about those shared ideas. Often that's a thing that might bring people into that business. The other thing is going to be the types of activities you're doing all the time. So for example, if you do have a team of coders, then they are likely to have like some shared cultural norms that comes from the training that they've had or the experience that they've had. If people have worked across the tech sector, they're going to have picked up different cultural norms from across the tech sector. And then even wider, the culture that you grow up in, the environments, the shared ideas that you grow up in, all of those things are going to set the culture. And it's really important when you're starting that team to be thoughtful about this, because some people might be coming with shared norms, shared ideas, and some people might be coming with different ideas. And it's really important that you're able to accept all of those things into your business so that people can come together and thrive. But it's also really important to set the tone as a founder or a leader in a business, or even as somebody who is an early member of the team. You have a lot of control over setting what the culture is going to become in a business. Now, of course, those in hierarchical leadership positions do tend to be able to have more control over what the culture is. But in my opinion, as a CEO, you really should be allowing that culture to form from the people within the team as well. It should be like a co-creation of the culture in your business. And when you do that and it works, it really does feel like an amazing thing. The things you can do as the founder in this kind of scenario is really be clear about the ethical and core values of a business from early on. Like I said, you set the mission, but then you're also going to set the tone on other things as well. Core values can be incredibly contradictory. When you are in a small founding team, if there are contradictory values, then that's really something that you want to be aware of. But having people that think differently in a founding team is really not a bad thing at all. And in fact, you do want to establish cultures of belonging such that you can bring in different perspectives. You may just need to balance that with ensuring that you are working to achieve the things that the business needs to achieve. At the end of the day, business is there to do business, right? Business is there to move towards something, to create changes in the world, to create products that are going to add value to people in the world. Now, we could jump into like all the cynicism around that too, but let's just assume that the majority of businesses I work with, the majority of founders I work with, are really looking to create positive impact with their business. It's really important that the team is marching towards those goals together. So some things that are really going to dictate that culture include communication. Communication is so important, and I would probably say this is the biggest foundation. If you are making assumptions about what people want, about how people are working, about what they're thinking about you, then there's probably going to be a whole bunch of misconceptions in there, and we don't want that. The other thing that's going to make a big difference is personalities in various positions in the business, and particularly strong personalities might set a culture. So again, you need to be really conscious of what culture you're setting and what culture other people are setting. Are there dominant behaviors, dominant ideas that may not be very helpful to the business or helpful to the talent in the business? If that's the case, then that's something that you need to deal with as a founder pretty early on, because that is going to dictate your culture. And then power structures are going to make a big difference. How decisions are made across a business and who's making those decisions. That is also going to really play into the type of culture that you've got. A physical environment does make a difference too. If you're remote versus hybrid or an in-person office, all of those things are going to make a difference to the culture. And you're going to have to put different things in place if you want to shift a culture in a certain direction. Now, I can remember when I went to Silicon Valley and visiting spaces there, and them having things like all those cliche things like slides and food and everything in the offices. It was all very copycat at that time. It was all like, oh, this is just what we do because that's what the other tech startups are doing, rather than really thinking through why you would do it. I also recently just read that OpenAI has an office which includes nap rooms, a 2-story library, and sunset and sunrise viewing decks. Now, I think all of those things actually sound pretty good. A library, that sounds good, right? Because that's all about learning, knowledge, that kind of sets a tone. Nap rooms, I mean, might mean you're expecting people to do ridiculously long hours, but actually having quiet spaces is actually a good thing in an office. And it's definitely something I notice when I'm in the offices that I go to, is that there aren't any of those quiet spaces, any of those alone spaces. So even if I need to go away and just like take 10 minutes, I can't, and that would be quite valuable, and again says something about the culture in terms of wanting people to have those quiet spaces, to be refreshed, to be able to work effectively. And as for sunset sunrise viewing decks, yeah, that sounds lovely in California. Do we get many sunrises and sunsets in lovely Bristol, England? Sometimes we do. But I think, having said all of that, the most important thing to stress about culture is that it's formed in micro interactions. It's all the small things that add up. So if you are in a leadership role, there are so many things that you can do in all the small interactions. And I think it's being mindful of that, which is the most important thing to do when it comes to dictating culture. There was a Harvard Business Review article on detractor and amplifier patterns in terms of creating a culture of belonging. And there's several different things. And again, it's very, very small things. Things like how you hold your body. And these are all the things that we would pretty naturally do as humans as a way to either accept or turn away from somebody, right? They're very simple things that we can do that make a big difference as to whether somebody feels like they belong. And if somebody feels like they belong in a culture, they are more likely to ask for help when they need help. They're more likely to express their good ideas amongst your team. They're more likely to be able to work better as a team. They're not going to be the ones who are sitting in their cars crying before they come into work every single day, and we know that that's something that happens all the time. So creating a culture of belonging is something that's really, really important, and like I said, that starts with the micro interactions. Now, I don't know about you, but all of that has triggered a whole bunch of new questions for me, so make sure that you write any new questions in the comments, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. I've recently started a new series called Is It Marmite, where we do business deep dives into the businesses we either love or hate, to see if we can learn something from those businesses, and if not, we can just be entertained by their stories. So do check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and press that notification bell so that you can be notified every time a new video drops. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.